Well, here to debate the topic, we have Tony Wilams, an activist with Reclaim the Block. His organization is already working on some level to do this in Minneapolis. And we also have John Burnett, who is a political strategist and believes that there can be meaningful change through police reforms, not through defunding. Thank you both for being with us. Tony, I want to start with you because your organization has already been doing this. Why do you think it works?
Well, the reason we think that it works is because it's become clear that the opposite doesn't work. Reform has failed over the centuries and is continuing to fail us today. So I work with a group called MPD 150 as well, which you can find our information at mpd150.com. And what we see historically is that there's a trend of failure to reform in police departments. What ends up happening is that an atrocity is committed against a Black or Native community member. The community rises up in protest, usually nonviolent, sometimes in a riot. Elected officials promise reforms. Those reforms can range from diversity of police departments to de-escalation tactics to newer innovations like body cameras. And then what we see is that those reforms fail to fundamentally change the fabric of policing and lead to more Black and Native death. Now, there are two reasons that those reforms fail. One is because a lot of the time they're not strong enough in the first place. Body cameras, for example, don't actually address police violence because they don't deter officers from using violence. When that's not true, we see that police unions and other police political groups are willing to actively push back on those reforms and make it impossible for them to continue to exist. We've seen that cycle many times in Minneapolis over the last 150 years, and especially in the last 5.
John, I want to touch on what Tony said for a moment, which is, when we talk about outsourcing some of the calls that police respond to, I saw a video that's gone viral out of Fairfax, Virginia, where a Black man is walking the street. He's under the influence of something. He's not a danger to police officers. They're encouraging him to get into the back of an emergency vehicle. And instead of leading him willingly, he's tased tased in the neck for several seconds. Does Tony have a point when he's talking about there's too much of a burden on police departments right now to respond to drug addictions or other mental and social issues?
I think there is a point with respect to other services. In fact, before a person even gets into a situation like that where someone else observes strange behavior or threatening behavior and they call 911, before we even get there, there needs to be mental health services, there needs to be homeless services, there needs to be an overall comprehensive help, if you will, from local municipalities. However, we haven't seen that. For an example, in New York City, Thrive NYC was passed to help those that are mentally ill, and it was funded by $850 billion. Right? I'm sorry, $850 million. However, when you look back at where that money went and how it was spent, there's no accountability, and the homeless services didn't actually meet the needs in the street, so to speak. So there's not enough comprehensive social services that would take the burden off society as well as the police officers. So that way the police officers can police with the community and not just police the community. So I think there are reforms that the president, even the commissioner of the #1 police operation in the country, which is NYPD, the commissioner came out today and said, yes, we will work on reform. We can take a percentage of our budget and allocate it toward youth programs, but there's a greater need and people need to have the political will in a lot of these cities that are run by Democrats to say, look, we need to actually fund these services, not just defund the police, right? Because that's insane, right? We need to actually service these individuals.
So let me go back to Tony for a second.
Resource.
John, let me just go. You made a lot of good points there. I want to go back to Tony for a second. So, Tony, what John is talking about right now is not taking money or defunding the police, but taking money from other places to boost those social programs. And I think a lot of critics, when we say defunding the police, are concerned that when you take that out of a police budget, these large-scale reductions could lead to a rise in crime. That's what law enforcement advocates are saying. But on the other hand, you look at Chicago, you look at the amount of crime that a city like Chicago has. The mayor there, Lori Lightfoot, weighed in on this, saying that what I've heard from people in neighborhoods is that they want more police protection, not less. What's your response to that?
Well, first of all, Mr. Burnett, with all due respect, I think it's laughable that you're saying that community programs can't be accountable to the community when it's very clear that police are completely incapable of restraint in the face of accountability by the community. I also think it's important to note that when you're talking about $850 million of investment in social services in New York City, the NYPD budget is an order of magnitude larger than that, multiple orders of magnitude larger than that. So when we talk about, oh, well, we can fund social services and the police, you say, you know, we really need Democrats to find the political will to fund those services. The fact of the matter is that the biggest expenditure in any of our municipalities is on policing. So where do you think we find the money to support those social programs and those alternate ways of keeping our community safe, if not from police budgets? And I think it's clear, I mean, when people talk about crime and crime being a major concern, the fact of the matter is the social sciences literature does not reflect the idea that crime is directly connected to policing levels, right? We see much more often that poverty and other social issues are the direct antecedents to crime, right? And so if we want to actually prevent these issues rather than just having an immediate response to those issues that documents those issues, police are never going to be the answer to that because police are fundamentally responders. We need to find other ways, I agree with Mr. Burnett, of addressing those issues from the front end. Now, the last thing that I'll say in response to what you said about Chicago is that when we see communities who are struggling with a large degree of disinvestment and aren't properly being taken care of by our social fabric, we oftentimes do see high levels of crime there, and we do see them call for more policing. I don't think what they're actually asking for is more police. I think what they're asking for is more support for safety in their community. And if you talk to any community member in those communities for longer than 5 minutes, you can hear that there are actually a lot of ways that they keep their community safe on a day-to-day basis without calling the police.
Well, obviously, we have
to get John, I'm going to give you the last word on this because we've got to kick it over to some other news. Go ahead, John.
Sure. Obviously, we have to get to the point of listening, and Tony hasn't been listening. You just clearly stated that the mayor of Chicago said what the people wanted, right? The thing is, people want to be safe and secure. The thing is that I gave an example of one line item in terms of mental health, $850 million being allocated, and it was poorly spent and never actually reached the social services that it was intended to help. You know, so we have to actually be serious about reform and making investments into other social services as well as economic developments. We cannot abolish nor defund the police. Those are radical ideas. Even former Vice President Biden said that those are two ridiculous ideas.
And we're doing it here in Minneapolis.
John Burnett,
and I encourage you to watch our success. Thank you.
All right, John Burnett and Tony Wilams, we really appreciate you being a part of the conversation. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have for now. Thanks for that.